Welcome everyone to our first ever special live correspondent report from James Bang, who's in Hong Kong for us right now, where people are protesting at Occupy Central. Talk to us, James. What can you see?
Hey Chris, so we're here in Mong Kok in Kowloon, which is one of the three main democracy squares that's being called, and that's Occupy Central in Central, Occupy...
Oh, we've cut out. We knew this would happen. We were practicing for ages just before we came on air, but what you're looking at there is the barricades that people have set up. Ooh. Okay, we're going to have to leave James there for a second. Whilst he's trying to sort out his bandwidth, I'm going to show you James's Twitter, where he's been actually featured in a lot of kind of crowdsourced news websites. He's been streaming stuff live. He's been taking pictures live. He's also raised money for batteries. If you look at his main picture, there's a whole bunch of mobile phone batteries there that he raised money for. And he's basically been giving people on the ground there some supplies so that they can get food, water, and internet connection, which of course is often now right up there with food and water in terms of human needs.
Is that him in the picture there with the batteries?
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, he's been doing that. Now we did actually practice before we came on air, see if we could get the bandwidth working, and it was working, and now it stopped working as soon as we go live.
On Nathan Road.
Aha. Okay, now he's stopped working. So I was just going to go through the story that has been kind of unfolding in Hong Kong. So we're going to wait to see if James can join us again. And essentially what has happened is there was an agreement in 1997 between the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which is where I'm from, and the Chinese government, establishing the relationships between the Hong Kong as an independent state and China. And there's actually a link to this document in the comments below. And as it was set out, it was going to be a two-state solution, but Hong Kong essentially had jurisdiction, China, sorry, had jurisdiction over Hong Kong. Now there are going to be some elections coming up in a couple of years, and the Chinese government based in Beijing have given people in Hong Kong essentially three choices to vote from. And the people in Hong Kong are now getting together saying, well, that's not really democracy. That's not giving people power if the only thing you have to choose from are three of the same. Have I described that right, James?
That's exactly the situation.
And so you guys have got together and you formed these barricades and you have essentially closed down central Hong Kong. Is that right?
Correct. So initially it was only central, but on Sunday around 6 p.m. the protesters, we weren't quite in central. We were in a place called Admiralty, which is right next to the central district, and thousands of protesters were in Admiralty preparing to move towards Central, to occupy Central, which was the original plan. However, police pushed us back using tear gas, rubber bullets, and they ended up pushing us back to Causeway Bay. If you have a map, are you able to pull a map up of Hong Kong?
Yes, I'm just going to do that now. Keep talking.
Okay, so they pushed us back to Causeway Bay, and when we were pushed back, we decided to split into two camps. And one camp went over all the way to the other side in Kowloon, to Mong Kok, where we are now. Because we figured, you know, they probably weren't expecting anything like that. So we just crossed the harbor and split the camp into two. One stayed in Causeway Bay, and the other moved to Mong Kok. On the intersections of Nathan Road and Argyle Street.
Yeah, I've got Argyle Street. I've actually been to this part of Hong Kong before. I kind of know it.
Admiralty as well.
Okay, I'm looking. Admiralty. Got
So
it.
that's where everyone was at around 5:36 p.m. on Sunday. That's
So that
where.
was actually the other side of the bridge. So you were south of the bridge.
So that's on Hong Kong Island, which is where Central is.
Right.
And can you also pinpoint Central there? You'll see it's right next to Admiralty.
Okay. Yes, I see it. Whoops.
Right, so can you zoom in and just to show the proximity
Yeah.
between Central and Admiralty?
I'm having a lot of luck with my mouse. Yes, I can. Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. So you can see it's not a far walk. So at around 6 p.m., we were getting ready to march towards Central, to occupy Central. And the police pushed us back to Causeway Bay. I can see it's on the map here on the right. There's a
Yeah.
red sign that says Causeway Bay, so they pushed us back there,
Mm-hmm.
where the camp split into two, and half stayed in Causeway Bay and the other half moved to Mongkok, which is on the other side of the river or ocean.
Yeah.
And Mongkok, the reason we chose Mongkok is like the central district of the Kowloon side. It's one of the main tourist areas. There's a lot of banks here.
Mm-hmm.
Really the logical choice.
Okay.
And so what happened was people started camping in the middle of the street in Mongkok, in Nathan Road, and Causeway Bay. And the images, the shocking images of the police attacking the students went viral. And as people were waking up, I spoke to a lot of people, asked them why they came to join the protest. And the overwhelming answer was that the violence of the police action against the students really outraged them, and it united the country together, and it turned a small protest into a huge, what it is today. So it's exploded as a consequence of the police action.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm just seeing if I can find the images now, and it's Occupy Central is the hashtag that you guys are using. That's the main one.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just pulling the images up now.
And what happened was, as people woke up and saw these horrible images of students being attacked, there's one video that you'll see on Facebook that's gone viral. It's an old lady. She must be about 70, 80 years old, and she's on the other side of a barricade of the police, and the police are on one side of the barricade. She is walking away from the police. She has her back turned, walking away, and the policeman taps her shoulder. So she turns around to face the police officer, and he sprays this 80-year-old grandmother in the face with pepper spray. And it's images like these that united the country and spurred everyone to come out and to really take action.
Well, that's incredible. I mean, I just don't know what to make of it. Like, is the whole world feeling the same sense of democracy right now? Because we've got so many of these protests really kicking off.
I think so. It started in the Middle East, and I honestly never expected it would come out to Hong Kong.
I think that's why we're feeling around the world is people are sick of getting beat up by police.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think the police react in this way?
Well,
Go ahead, James.
Well, we believe that the government is basically under the orders of the Chinese government. It's not a Hong Kong government that's thinking for itself. It's taking orders directly from Beijing. It's a puppet government. And what we feel like is China just said, you know what, we've got to disperse this. They took swift action, figuring, that would be that. Instead, it totally backfired on them. It really backfired, and it grew the protest tenfold. And really spurred the start of this umbrella revolution.
Can you tell us, like, how many votes did the current candidates selected by Beijing have to get in order to stand in this election in a couple of years, 2017?
Yes, so there's going to be 1,200. There's going to be, sorry, a bit loud here. I'm just going to stay here and let you listen to this for a bit.
Yeah, let's listen to this.
頭先我講一次嘅，我估有啲朋友都聽過。咁其實咧，其實頭先咧，成個古仔係我未講完嘅，我真係俾咗伯伯講咧，之後就到唔翻我啦，知咪？咁其實係好事嚟嘅，就睇到我哋人民自主係咪啊？我哋唔需要大台，每個人都可以揸住支咪發言，係咪？咁其實咧，頭先咧就咁我哋頭先有講啲洗腦啊，即係話頭先主持人都話我哋有個監察員喺個腦度。其實我哋有好多㗎，除咗所謂共產黨洗腦之外，其實我哋喺呢個商業社會一直存在一直嘅洗腦。我頭先同啲學生講，之前我咪話我同啲學生講民主嘅。
See your question.
Can you give us a brief translation of what they're saying?
I really can't. I'm actually Korean. I'm not Chinese, so I don't really understand everything they're saying. But to answer your question about the how many votes are needed, there's going to be an election committee of 1,200 people. These are basically going to be business people, pro-Beijing people. There's going to be a committee of 1,200, and you just need a majority, so 601. And you're elected the chief executive of Hong Kong from the 2 or 3 candidates elected by this committee. That's the proposal that's on the table that Hong Kong people are not accepting.
And what are the people at Hong Kong Central asking for?
We are asking for full universal suffrage. Can you see the sky? It's like these things are flying in the sky, like people are clapping.
What are they? What are they?
These, I don't know. They're like flying things. One's landing. One's landing. Oh, it's one of the yellow ribbons. People, the yellow ribbons flying from the sky. Someone in the building are flying down yellow ribbons, which is the symbolic ribbon. You can see everyone is wearing on there.
That's great. No, they're not drones. Tom's asking if they're drones. They're not drones, categorically. People are taking pictures of them on the floor, I see. So I'm just going to link to the Wikipedia page. I think I put it in the description below. You can look up the history of universal suffrage, just because I don't assume that everyone knows all of these terms, particularly if they're joining us just as, members of the public who are not privy to the historical significance of what we're talking about right here.
Can you give us, Chris, maybe can you give us a brief summary of what it is, universal suffrage?
The word suffrage actually means to vote, and so some people I've heard have confused it with the word suffering. It's not suffering; it just means vote. So universal means that everyone can vote, and I believe it comes from the French Revolution. And so it's the idea of democracy. People want to be able to choose and run their government by the people for the people. And we often hear of the suffragettes, right? This was the women's vote movement in England back in the late 19-teens, early 1920s.
I have a question for James. I'm curious why they're blocking off all the downtown and cutting off all the commerce and stuff, doesn't that hurt all the business and stuff? I don't understand how that disrupts the government there.
James, can you hear us?
Well, I can hear you. This week in Hong Kong is the biggest shopping week in Hong Kong. It's known as Golden Week.
So it's known as. Yeah, we lost him. So I believe there were people actually with stalls up and down Nathan Road. Let me just tell James that we lost him.
It's probably the main shopping street, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, okay, you could argue that that's, you know, if it's, I mean, it's just disrupting business as usual. Okay, let's see if we can get him. Looks like he's not coming in right now. No. They're jamming us, I think.
Yeah. Well, he's coming in on a 4G signal, so it tends to drop in that.
Yeah, that was my question when I see these protests, as it seems to be just disrupting the local businesses. I don't understand how that disrupts the government. And then it gives the police an excuse to come out.
Right. But there's also, it sounds like there's also some collusion between the business districts and Beijing government as well. It sounds like you can get elected as long as you're sympathetic and rich, which usually is a recipe for disaster. Ah, James is back.
Hey, so Jamie, what's your question again?
Okay, my question is, it seems that all these protests are blocking off the businesses there and the local commerce. How does that disrupt the government? It seems like that is just an excuse for them to roll out the police and crack down on the people and to make it worse, not better.
Well, you know, we had to get the attention of the Chinese government and the Hong Kong government. First of all, we've been calling for the chief executive to come and meet us, to speak with us, all last week, and he so far has refused. And that's when we were peacefully in a park. You know, we weren't doing much. We were in a park, peacefully camped out there, and the government just flat out ignored us all week. It was only on Sunday when we hit the street that there was action. And that's when they started listening. So, yes, it does take great civil disobedience from a population to get the attention of their government. Or else, if we're just camped out in the park all week, they're just going to ignore us. So, yes, we do have to make an impact on the shopping, on the financial districts, to get their attention, for them to listen to us.
And, James, you've also had some help.
And another point I might add is,
you've had some help from very wealthy people.
Before I talk about that, this is all. Yes, we have. But before I talk about that, I just wanted to say this is Golden Week here in Hong Kong. October 1st is the Chinese National Day, and this is when tourists from China flood into Hong Kong. This is like Black Friday times 7, right? The whole week is like Black Friday. So we are impacting the biggest shopping week in Hong Kong. So this, if there was a time to do it, this was the time to get their attention. And that's what we're disrupting, to elaborate on Jamie's point earlier. And you were saying, yes, we've had a lot of really generous support from wealthy people. I was at the volunteer station yesterday here in Mongkok, which was the headquarters for all the supplies coming in. So water, food, medical supplies all came here in Mongkok. And from here, we managed the logistics of sending out the supplies to the other areas in Central Causeway Bay and Admiralty. And so people were dropping off supplies, and really the interesting part was that there were Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, Audis, you know, really, really nice cars coming by, and they would just empty their trunk, and it would be full of water, food, drinks, masks, just things to really support the protest. So we have had a lot of help from everybody in the community.
Okay, that's a good explanation. I just wasn't quite sure on how that all fit in together. Thank you for the explanation, James.
Yeah, and of course the people that are protesting
All
are
right.
shoppers too,
Welcome,
right?
Jamie.
They would otherwise be shoppers. So clearly people are pricing their sentiment into the market function by refusing to shop and by saying actually this is more important.
Well, here's another interesting point. This Golden Week, shopping week, isn't actually targeting us local Hong Kong people. It's targeting the flood of tourists that will come in from China, and they're the ones who are going to spend the money at Gucci, Louis Vuitton. It's not us regular Hong Kong citizens. So already, if you see in these retail districts, the shops are not catered to us. They're all catered to the Chinese tourists, wealthy Chinese tourists. So that's something people here aren't happy about as well. They feel like they're losing their country to China already. And also a few years back, if you remember, China started to implement their history into our education system. And there were mass protests then as well. So we're really feeling the squeeze from China of their influence into our Hong Kong independence.
Now, what's happening now? What's the cheering about?
Let me just switch cameras.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same rally. We're still here. The same rally is still going on.
We're getting good stills.
Front-facing camera really sucks up the bandwidth.
Yeah, I hope it's not costing him too much in his contract. Let's see if we can try. I'll just ping him in Skype again to.
Yeah, he may be better off just flipping his phone around and pointing at it with the front camera.
Oh,
How did the whole thing start again?
So a couple of students just started camping out in the park, and that was when I first heard about it as well on Al Jazeera, just in the night time. It's just some big students, and I was interested they were using the word occupy because I haven't heard that used within this context for quite a while. And then what happened was it obviously escalated because this old lady was pepper sprayed and the police started showing some kind of brutality, and that's what really kicked off. That's when lots and lots of people started descending on this space. And at the top of the show we actually showed a map of Hong Kong and how everything sort of began in Admiralty, south of the Hong Kong proper, the main island, south of the river, and then it kind of spread out and various factions of the Occupy camp started to split up. And it's when things get decentralized, that's when the government and the police force then become powerless to try and stop it because it's in too many places at the same time. And so now these guys are on Nathan Road, which is in the center of Hong Kong Island, and they've got this major junction, and they're literally just camped out in the road, which is stopping all public transport and is stopping everything from moving. And they've actually had billionaires show up in cars full of water and food that have been handing out. So clearly even the people in the financial district are sympathetic to the cause. And James is back with us.
Hey guys, so
Hey.
that was the protest, the second mini gathering you saw.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're going to do now is just continue.
No, we're not.
Just continue to have bandwidth problems.
I think this is pretty good that we're getting this far with it. That's quite impressive. We actually
for a live stream.
not bad for a live stream, but we're hoping things can get better as well.
It's coming up on 11 p.m. in Hong Kong too, so
it's closer to 12, I think.
no,
Yeah,
it's 11 p.m.
Okay. So we've got a comment here from Majan. It says, have any previous Occupy protests ever brought about changes? From what I understand, all the global protests get publicity, but I'm not aware of any direct change or improvement. Not big on the world news. Oh, he's saying he's not big on world news and politics. Well, they don't so much have an impact on the political system itself, but they have an impact in inspiring other people to join them. Like the Occupy movement that we were doing at St. Paul's here in London ended up becoming the sort of central hub for Occupy globally. It started off as Occupy Wall Street, ended up raising awareness amongst so many people across the world that actually it gave them the tool set and a place and a kind of a name to kind of associate with. Now, eventually, Occupy itself as a physical movement had to stop because there's only so much pepper spray you can stand, right? But what ended up happening is it all ended up moving online. And of course, now you've got things like live streaming and Google Hangouts. I'm predicting that the next phase of Occupy is going to be a decentralized version. And that's when global governments really are going to find themselves in a tricky point. Because you can't attack, A, what you can't see, and you can't attack something that's spread out all over the place. Look at the way the US is launching these airstrikes at the moment on ISIS, attacking ISIS as if they themselves were like the American empire, all centralized with these headquarters and these bunkers and these, you know, big buildings. That's not what ISIS are made of. They're made up. They're actually a movement that is well funded, suicidal to the extreme, and is therefore unafraid of death, and is built up of individual militants and radicals. It's not built up of all this kind of dense infrastructure that you can just bomb from an aeroplane. So I think that a lot of
governments don't have a Capitol building. I mean, yeah, it's a whole new paradigm of the way things operate. It's something they just haven't wrapped their minds around yet. And
yeah, like a lot of people talk about, what were we talking about yesterday? And I went round to Thomas' house. Thomas, a member of the Bitcoin community in London. He's making a documentary, and he was asking for my feedback, and maybe I can get involved in it and so on. And we were going through the thing, and it's like, it's not even like anarchy's a choice, because anarchy exists already. It exists between the borders of countries as it currently stands. There is no 999 or 911 on the world stage, right? If your country gets invaded and you're not a member of any kind of international military organization, you're fucked. Like, that's just the way things actually are. And so rather than couching this whole debate as to whether or not we should go for something like an anarchist system, I think what's starting to emerge is that it already is. It is whether we like it or not, because the technology is moving us that way. This technology, you know, with one of these, I'm a writer, a journalist, a photographer. I am everything. I'm an operative.
Well, the internet is anarchy. But there are no rulers on the internet, because if YouTube stops working or Hangouts stop working, somebody will replace it, lickety-split, and we can move on to a different platform and do the same thing, or change the way we do it. I mean, look how we've replaced journalism, or the way, you know, live via satellite in news reporting. We're doing the same thing they were doing on network news just last year.
Yeah, that's right, because back then, if you had the pipes, you had the message. And now what's happening is everyone's got the pipes now. And what the governments are having to do is they're having to play the news cycle the way they've always done it. They're having to play the spin the way they've always done it. And so they're dropping airstrikes. They're doing the airstrikes for PR reasons. And when you think that one of those missiles and those bombs they drop, each one costs about 2 million. Right, so you're talking about an airline pilot that can't even dream of ever earning enough money to afford one of these bombs, dropping it on a country that could never in its million years achieve that kind of money in its lifetime. And you start to see the absurdity of this situation, all just for a PR spin, just for PR. James is back, if we can join him here.
Can you hear me, Kieran?
Yes, we can.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, but I don't know that you can hear me. We lost him again.
I can hear you very clearly.
Okay, good, good.
You may be better off using your rear camera and just sticking with that one, James.
Yeah, he's also got his laptop on him, so let me just ask him to use the laptop. But Theo, what are your thoughts?
Um, well, it's really interesting to see. I mean, I didn't really catch it at the beginning, so that's why I was asking about the background. I'd like to know. It seems to be about voting, like you said, general suffrage. And I was wondering, so James is from Korea. I wonder if Hong Kong, how big the expatriate population is there, and if that's an issue too. So I don't. Who can vote now? What is the issue? You know what I mean? What's the Is it only Chinese nationals, or is it what's the issue? Because, for example, even here in Germany, it's a big topic in the cities because some cities have like 30%, 40% non-Germans, but they're not allowed to vote unless they, get German national status. And it's a discussion, and it probably will never change. It'll never change in America too. You're going to always have to be an American citizen to vote. But it sounds like I think Hong Kong, it has a very different history. So I was wondering, how that works with the voting. Who gets to vote, or do you get to vote, Chris, if you go to Hong Kong? Or I don't know
No,
what
I don't.
I mean, I guess years ago you might have been able to. I have no idea, what the current system is. And I know that China, I think they don't really know what to do with Hong Kong. They got it, they took over after the treaty's finished, and they're like, okay, what are we going to do? Well, we can't just, make it, our kind of weird version of communism. We got to keep it as it is, but what are we going to do? We can't have it be a threat. So I think it's kind of difficult for the Chinese government, and they kind of are kind of archaic. We know that they're kind of old-fashioned. They move really slowly. They've got all this old power in place, and they probably don't really know exactly what to do right now. And I think that's what you get with a lot of these police actions with the violence and stuff. I mean, I don't know if I can't say if they're isolated incidents or not, but I think that sometimes the police chief, he just gets an order bring it under control, and he doesn't know what to do, and then maybe they do something really dumb and provoke even a bigger reaction from the protesters, which is totally self-defeating from the point of the police.
Well,
I think
we kind of nailed this. We nailed this in ancient Greece. Cleisthenes knew exactly what to do when the mob rose up. He invented democracy, or he popularized.
Right.
And he said, okay, what is the one way I can get you all to agree in absence of agreement, right? What is the one thing I can do to have you all settle down and say, okay, I know that we all disagree about stuff. And it was the voting. Now, since then, things have changed, and information travels over geography much quicker than it used to, such that a lot of people in the world today just think, why don't you give me the power directly? I'm the one closest to this situation. Just give me the tools and the energy I need to overcome this myself. It's not that you aren't smarter than me back at HQ, back in Westminster, back in Congress or wherever. It's just that you're not here now. And to be local is to be powerful. That is to be in direct contact, right?
Yeah.
What is around you is practical.
So it's probably like what you said earlier, that what happens in China in a lot of the cities is that the members of the Communist Party, it's not really communist anymore. It's just a kind of really strange form of crony capitalism where you have to be a member of that club in order to get the benefits that other people don't get, and probably that's what's been going on in Hong Kong too. I don't know exactly the details, but where big companies or different, they get special privileges that other companies and other individuals don't get, and so you have.
I don't think we've ever seen a true communist country. They've all been some form of crony capitalism.
Well, they tried it. I mean, Mao was really, going pretty hard and trying it, but
he was
you can
still a
discuss
level
that too.
above the rest. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, he lived in a palace and everything.
Well, he was so hardcore that Lenin wouldn't even talk to him anymore. He got so hardcore. So anyway, yeah, basically they had a falling out, because I think Mao was like, okay, you got to do it like this. This is the real deal. Anyway. But yeah, it does go back to that a little bit, and I think it's kind of ironic how things are developing, because you have America. If you look at America and China, and they kind of are moving closer to each other. Like China does these so-called reforms and opens up the market, and then America does some things that are kind of a little bit the opposite, and it kind of, I don't know, in some parts of the policies they get closer and closer to each other, and it's really strange. Another really interesting thing is that China has, I think America has more people in prison per capita than China. The problem is that we don't know if you're from China, but from the statistics we have, America has way more people in prison per capita than China, and so I think that's always an interesting comparison. And now Hong Kong has that special status, and the people are not going to have all this collusion that a lot of other people have been subject to for a long time probably, and they're just not going to stand for it. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen.
I think the problem is
I like the umbrellas.
Yeah, the umbrellas are cool. I think that Epicurus has a lot to say about this.
That's really
because
I think the umbrella thing I first started seeing, I think it was either in Thailand or Cambodia where they started protesting with them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what. Oh, here we.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Oh, good. We got James back.
hello.
Hey. Hi. All right. So the mini little gathering here is now finished. So they're not on the mic anymore. So we'll move forward, and you'll see here there's a station set up for water and food. And I've just taken a bottle here, and I'm going to keep walking down on Nathan Road. On the left here, you'll start to see these double-decker buses that probably you guys have in London, right, Chris?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I'm sure you guys have seen many images on Twitter of the democracy bus with 689 on the front.
Yes, we have. Tell us what that means.
Right, so the number 689 is very symbolic here, because that's the number of votes it took to elect our current chief executive.
So they only needed 689 votes, not 689,000, 689.
No, 689, that's it, to elect the chief executive of Hong Kong.
Wow.
And they're proposing basically, they're proposing the same thing again, basically, and this time they just picked the 2 or 3. So now, as we're coming down, this is a third mini rally that we've come across now. And this third mini rally is behind the democracy bus that you can see here.
Democracy bus.
So we're going to keep walking down, and I'll take you guys to the front of the bus where you can see all the things the people have posted on there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the third station of water and food. As you can see, we're very well stocked. We have supplies about every 20 meters. There's a tent set up for people to get food and water. So we'll just show you what's in a tent. So we have volunteers who cool the water for us because it's so hot. It was 35 degrees. So we have nice, cool ice water here. And if you're hungry, we have some chips, some crisps, some masks are provided just in case the police turn violent, and just to protect yourself from the pepper spray, and fruit. So as you can see, The supply tents are all very, very well stocked thanks to the generosity of the Hong Kong people, who have really supported us.
And don't pour water on tear gas.
So now, that's what they've been doing here, so I guess we've got the wrong information.
Yeah, you're supposed to use milk.
I will make sure that that information gets spread around. Thank you for that, Jamie. And we'll ask volunteers to send milk. And we'll probably be here within hours if we are.
When I was in the Army, they used to tear gas us all the time, and it would get worse from their sweat and stuff, and if we poured water on it, it really made it bad. So it was best to just let it evaporate on its own, or use something like milk or something dry to get it off.
Thank you so much, Jamie. We had no idea, and we've been using water this whole time. So we'll make sure all the camps get that information, and we'll make sure we have milk prepared at all the camps.
What did it read on that sign, Jane? We didn't see it. It was a bit pixelated.
We want democracy now.
Okay.
Sounds reasonable.
I think so. So now we're at the main intersection. This is the center point of Argyle Street and Nathan Road, where the protest in Mongkok here, in Occupy Mongkok, originated. This is the center point where you see the tents. The reason the tents are put up is because Hong Kong's really hot, so around the middle, it's probably going to be 35 plus degrees Celsius, so it's just to shield the sun. And it was actually raining tonight, so it also helped shield the rain as well. So this is the front of the democracy bus here. As you can see, someone's erected like a big banner across the traffic light. And this is the 689 democracy bus. It's been renamed. This is today's newspaper, today's local newspaper here in Hong Kong. You can see images from the protest. This is Admiralty. This is the area on Sunday where police use pepper spray and tear gas.
Yeah, somebody was saying in the comments that you can actually throw the tear gas back at them if you're wearing a hot, thick gloves or something like that.
Yes, there's a video that went viral. One of the students picked up the tear gas and threw it right back at the police, and it's a great video. I'll try and find that for you guys and share that.
Yeah, they're very, very hot though, so you have to wear thick gloves or pot holders or something.
Okay, so we'll make sure no one tries to do that without gloves. We'll also send that information out. Jamie, do you think it's possible for you to prepare like a document for us or something? Because it sounds like you have a lot of knowledge and experience in special training that we could really use to defend against this attack.
I'll see what I can do after we get done with this broadcast. I do have a lot of training on that.
Wow, so we're actually facilitating an uprising right here on the network. We are colluding with the rebel forces, making military manuals. James will never be allowed into China now. He's going to be on a list.
So
there were actually some Chinese visitors here 2 summers ago when they came out to the gun range and were taking pictures of me with my guns, and had wanted to pose with my guns and had pictures of themselves. So I was imagining these pictures of the big American gunman all over China.
That's Cantonese for democracy, I'm guessing. That's what those words mean.
The word democracy is everywhere. 689 and democracy are the prevalent words that you'll see around.
I wonder if Cantonese has its own word for democracy, or whether it's phonetic. Does Cantonese have its own word? I know Cantonese, there are many different variations on Cantonese, but...
I'm sure there is, but I'll have to ask and check on that. As you can see, this is an image of the police attacking one of the protesters, the students, that's collapsed.
Oh, wow. Is that a picture? Is that a photograph?
Yes, their faces have been scratched off.
Right.
And we're just going to... Now, this is HSBC, right in the middle.
Oh, the money launderers, yeah.
Exactly, the money launderers who we've shut down successfully for the last 2 days.
Great. No more Mexican cartels.
And what do they get away with? Just a slap on the wrist, right? Pay a little fine.
Yeah.
So 689 on the front of HSBC as well. The whole of the bank is plastered with democracy signs.
It looks like it's been fairly peaceful, though. I don't see broken windows and things like that.
Oh no, this is Hong Kong. Hong Kong people are the most peaceful protesters I've personally seen anywhere in the world. They pick up all the trash that we've left on the streets. The barricades, we move them away to when ambulances have to move. We've been very cooperative, and we've been the people here have been really classy citizens, I would say.
That's very encouraging to hear. I like to hear that.
So I'm going to take you guys to the center of the rally now. We're almost there, where the tent is. This is the center point. Just going to go around real quick. Sorry, it might blur. So this right here is the center point. So they're speaking right now.
What are those boxes there?
Supplies, fruit, water, again, cold water in the middle of the white boxes there. We have fruit, these boxes here. It's people sitting in the middle because they haven't left their stuff. So we need to get food and water to the middle as well, not just outside.
Okay. There I saw one guy walking around with a blowhorn.
There he is.
Oh, looks like we've lost. So we're losing James again there.
So I put some links to 2 documents I found in the chat.
Let's get those up whilst we're waiting for James to get his signal back. Yeah.
I mean, we can go over them and see if they're accurate, but I think they're the pretty general ones. I think they mentioned something besides milk, this malloc stuff, but you can use milk too.
Yeah, I'm just putting
the basic, basic stuff you can do.
Mallox is antacid for you take for like Tums but it's a liquid.
Okay, that's good to know. This is everything you need for a resistance. This is some of the pictures that he was taking earlier on when it was just like a basic protest. And there was just people in a park, and looks like there's some music going on. I understand James's work has also been featured in New Zulu as well. It's NEWZULU. They put his work on the front page. It's citizen journalism in action.
Open source journalism. Excellent.
Well, this is what I'm trying to like get people to do, is like I'm timestamping as much as I can afford to, because it does cost money to timestamp stuff, but putting it in the blockchain, proving that it existed in that form at that time. And also I want to see someone create a camera app that is able to put the Merkle root of the current Bitcoin block into the picture itself. So, and then divide up the video into 10-minute segments. Now, if that video doesn't get timestamped, the hash of that video with the Merkle root embedded in it, either hidden in the image itself, which you can do with certain software, or at the bottom, if that doesn't make it into the Bitcoin blockchain 10 minutes after it was uploaded, you have reasonable cause for doubt that it may have been doctored, right? Because as soon as the video ends, you know that the video is 10 minutes long, right? So if it's going to be imported into editing software, it's going to take the editor at least 10 minutes to edit it, okay? So if it doesn't make it into the blockchain within 10 minutes after the video's completion, which you can just do with a time signature, you can just work that out with using ordinary centralized time, then you have reasonable cause for suspicion that that video is edited. As far as I'm aware, it's not possible to edit video on the fly. I used to work in post-production, albeit on stills, but I mean, I also know how to do online editing. It's the same discipline. And it takes time. It takes a skilled technician to edit a video convincingly. It's hard enough doing it in Photoshop on a still image. That in itself takes time. But to create your alpha channels and your masks and things like that, to get 2 layers of an image to overlap and get the color just right, get the contrast just right, very, very hard to do. So you know that if somebody is like got a body cam right on, and it's got a wide angle lens, maybe a mid-range lens as well, just so you get extra detail, that is connected to the blockchain API. It is downloading the current block height, it's downloading the current Merkle root. Below the video in a meta strip, it can actually have the current centralized time using UTC, the regular time that we all use, hours and minutes, but then it also puts in the block height and the current Merkle root, which you could not have known. There's no way of knowing what the Merkle root is until it's broadcast to the Bitcoin network. Now, I still don't quite have an idea of how you would get the GPS lockdown, because obviously you could just lie about the GPS. You could just upload a different coordinate and say it came from the GPS chip. However, I believe you can do certain things, like, for example, if you broadcast out, if the camera itself or the app on your phone is timestamping the hashes of the 10-minute video segments in stages, then presumably you could use blockchain.info's API to confirm that you were in that region of the world. It's like a radius of 500 kilometers or something. It's quite a broad radius, but it's enough to kind of say, well, if the GPS data says this and you were in that region, and obviously you're videoing something, so unless you're in a studio lot, you know, in the Warner studio, and you've set up a backdrop, and the reason is, it's not so much for the reason for contemporaneous evidence, because even in courts this becomes an issue, is that the more time elapses between the event and any kind of article or investigation, or any kind of scrutiny, the easier it gets to falsify information. In fact, Carnegie Mellon and other sociologists have done experiments before where they have been able to fake events online just by reusing old material from old events on Twitter to create the illusion that something is taking place. And it's just a matter of time, really, until someone does an image search or someone scrutinizes it or asks a hard question, and then the illusion is busted. But if you think about 9/11 conspiracies, if you think about all these kind of, particularly the conspiracy movement people, what they do is they create an entertaining story and get you to adopt the entertainment as long as they can cast sufficient doubt onto the evidence. They rarely have a smoking gun. What would be better is if we encouraged a culture of accountability, so that enough people turned up to these protests. Doesn't have to be every single person, but maybe just 2 or 3 people turn up with a blockchain-based camera that is time-stamping its contents, is uploading it, and that way no one can refute it later. Everyone can confirm that this event took place at this time and no other time, and then that way, as long as these videos are shared around and the screen grabs are shared around, they've always got their hashes that go with them. and then you can actually use that hash as a hyperlink. That then becomes your universal resource locator, right? Rather than it just being a link somewhere on a social media website, which can easily be taken down, it can easily be faked. And then that way, in the future, when these conspiratards come along and they say, oh, look, you know, this is just a Zionist conspiracy, or whatever, they have these kind of theories that the Rothschilds are controlling everything and all this kind of thing. It's like, well, show me your timestamps. Like, give me the evidence in a constructive way that I can actually falsify, because all I know for certain right now is that you're trying to persuade me of some conspiracy theory that you've come up with. I don't know for certain that it's a Zionist conspiracy. What I know for certain is you're trying to persuade me that it is, and you're giving me these half-baked images and these crappy-looking video images that are always, you know, terrible quality, and never quite.
You're drawing on a dollar bill, these triangles and stars and things like that, and trying to convince me that there's some magic numbers involved. And
yeah, 689 is on there somewhere.
689. It's like.
And Nostradamus predicted that, and
yeah, so it's I just feel like we should have this culture of accountability.
Guys, am I back?
Yes, you are.
I've run out of battery, and so I've come here at one of the volunteer stations. This is the main volunteer station where I've borrowed a battery pack.
Wicked.
And just to tell you the generosity of the Hong Kong people, we put up a notice.
Put up a notice.
Yeah, what's going to happen?
We put up a notice. Battery pack. So what's happened here is this is the right. So people here have been. If you see the, let me just turn the camera around. You guys can see this is where the trucks would stop off the supplies. The people would donate water, fruit, medical supplies, drop them off here, unload the trucks, and we would put them out on the area. You know, all these supplies here, we would move them in. So you can see here there's stacks of medical supplies, food, which has all been donated, gas masks here.
It's really amazing how well organized and how many supplies there are for this. It's just outstanding.
That's what I mean. Correct. And how this works is there's a really simple system. We write down.
They write down. They write down. Probably they write down what they want, and then when you walk by, you're able to work out how it is you can get there. Let's take some comments from the Q&A. Whilst James is coming to us.
We have too much, right?
Say that again, James. You're just back.
Oh, I'm back. All right. So I was saying, right here on the board is where we would write what we needed donated, and within half an hour or an hour, trucks would be coming here, cars would be coming here with supplies of exactly what we requested. So one example I gave you was the, and within an hour, one generous person donated 140 of these battery packs here.
That's incredible. That's a free market right there.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm walking. Yeah. So that's this whole area, the supply station, and this supply station is where all these vans transport everything to Central, Causeway Bay, Admiralty. They message us whatever we need. Oh, sorry, whatever they need. They send the message, and we send a van full of what they need. And just to mention, the van drivers are all volunteers. They decided to take the day off work instead of making a living on, because they're independent van drivers. They've decided to take the day off and volunteer their van, their time, the gas, the penalties. I mean, they're not covered.
Quite a lot of noise coming. Okay, we're going to have to leave James there. Hang on, let me just try and cut out his mic. There we go. This is James, by the way, with his batteries as well. So I think he's been supplying them as well. So James seemed to have some sound issues. I might try turning his audio back on just a minute in case it was a temporary thing.
Yeah, I think it may have been temporary because that's the first he's had that scratchy mic.
So whenever this protest is over, there's probably going to be a lot of organization that comes out of this. It'll be interesting to see what happens after all this protest ends. So there's going to be a lot of new people, and then maybe they, create some kind of new structures to see what happens in the future.
Yeah, they certainly look well financed, well organized. I mean, they're setting up their own supply lines. They're almost becoming a nation state themselves, which was something that was brought up in that BBC interview that Jen Copestake did, where she was sort of saying that now anyone can set up their own state. And I do think that the question of where we go from here is a legitimate question, because I think one of the concerns that I have is that once we go this route, there's no going back. This is a one-way process. So whatever we do now is going to be defining in terms of what the future looks like for us as a species, like as a co-inhabiting group of people on this planet. So I definitely think that what we're witnessing at the moment is that formation. And I almost just see the governments now across the world as being slightly irrelevant. It's old tech. It's old, worn-out technology that just doesn't work anymore. It's not a question of whether or not who's got the power, the regulatory capture, or should we, apply for that license. Like, you're just missing the fucking point when you talk like that.
That's what I've kind of come to realize too. It's just outdated, and they're going to fade away because they're not needed anymore.
Mm.
There's a big sign in yellow and black that says democracy now.
And I'm all for it if it's voluntary cooperation between people.
Yeah.
Anarchy right now is kind of a scare word. Maybe voluntarism or whatever is a better word for it. Maybe I should start using that.
I have big problems with the wording. That's why I wanted to know what the Cantonese word was for democracy, because I'd be interested to know whether China has its own words for democracy, which are separate to, because obviously the Western etymology is people power. Demo was where the word demonstration comes from, means the many, the people, and kratos, power. So in fact, a lot of people, when they think of democracy, they tend to think of voting as being the pillar of democracy, when actually it's not. In fact, what you're doing when you're voting is you're outsourcing your power, you're giving your control to someone else. Now the police, the politic, the body politic, everyone is part of the politics. At the moment, when you watch politicians on TV, all they're really doing is posturing. All they're really doing is just talking. They're not doing anything. Like a good constructive human being should be asking for help. A good constructive human being should be saying, oh, I'm trying to tackle child poverty, like I said in my manifesto, and I get up against some unanticipated problems. I was wondering if anyone could help. No, what they do is they blame it on the guy who was in the administration before them. They then say how they're doing the best possible job and how the opposition are wrong. They start calling names, and then they kick every problem down the road to the next guy. Like, that's not a decent human being acting in a cooperative way. That's someone who just thinks of their job in terms of getting into power and then staying into power.
Right, and how can someone represent you that you've never met?
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
I have never even met a city council member here.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody that low on the totem pole. And when you talk about presidents and governors and things like that, it's ridiculous. And they don't give a fuck about you.
No, this is the thing. They care about themselves and they care about their careers. That's why all you ever hear politicians talk about is their relationship to their job. Like, it's always, all the headlines are couched in terms of whether or not they're going to get into power again, whether or not they're going to lose their job, whether there's an internal threat from inside of their own party, or whether it's an external threat coming from outside of the party. The whole thing is geared up as a soap opera. Nobody ever talks about the issues themselves. Like when did the Conservative Party in the UK have got a conference on at the moment, and we had Theresa May on, talk about ISIS and all of this, and she's talking about how we're going to beat ISIS on values. And it's like, well, this great speech writing. You clearly put a lot of public money into paying a graduate of a reputable red brick somewhere in the United Kingdom, and they've done you a great job of writing a technically well-written speech, and lots of people are clapping, and it's lots of yeah, yes men. But I don't hear a whole lot of substance. Like, can you just share with us some of the technical aspects of tackling ISIS? Can you talk to us about, give us some names, maybe show us a map, maybe we could actually collaborate on this? There's absolutely no reason why we can't tackle this issue ourselves on the ground. Who are these people financing ISIS? Because they're not using Bitcoin, they're not using Dark Wallet, Rainbow Wallet, they're not using any of these tools. They're getting angel funding from regions like Qatar, probably the same people that are buying up London property. So why don't we talk to those people and challenge them and ask them, why did you just fund that person? What was it that made you do that? And is there anything we can do to redress it? Is there anything we can do to undo that? Because the people of the United States and the people of the United Kingdom don't necessarily feel as though they're represented by their government militaries that go dropping bombs on people. So in case you have an issue with us, whatever us means, perhaps I'd like you to know that I didn't support any of those previous wars going back in the last 14 or 10 to 14 years.
Exactly. They don't represent me for that.
No, it's a complete waste of money, and also it just ends up in a never-ending cycle of violence that just violence begets more violence, begets more violence. And the whole thing just grows out of control to the point where why can't we just talk about it?
Well, yeah, they used to say in the United States here after 9/11 that, oh, the terrorists hate us for our freedoms. Well, no, they hate us because we're bombing the shit out of them all the time. And you see these guys over there in the Middle East are like, well, you got this military that's coming through there, bombing them and coming through their villages and destroying everything with tanks and, breaking into their houses. And, I would be pissed too if the army or the police or anybody was coming through here and busting down my door. I mean, that's going to pretty much radicalize any population. And we saw the same thing with the Viet Cong.
And it's a really cowardly form of war as well, when you just bomb people with drones and you're not even there to look them in the eye. It's just such a cowardly thing to do.
That's the whole thing. It's like what we've been talking about. It's that outsourcing violence. It's just, then you don't have to look them, like you said, it's just, you don't have to look them in the eye. You don't have to, do this, what do they say now? Boots on the ground and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there are going to be boots on the ground, but they say they're not going to be, but it's going to be required. But, it's a big thing that as long as there's no American casualties, then it's okay. But as soon as there's 1 or 5 or 10, then it starts to become a bigger deal, and then you have to find a better excuse. But if you have drones, then you don't need to put boots on the ground, and you can just have these guys in these video game rooms basically that are controlling the drones. They control them from here, actually, in Germany. There's a really big center at Ramstein, and a lot of the drones around. And that's a little bit illegal. There's been a big discussion about it because some of the German politicians really don't like that, because they say that's illegal.
A little bit illegal.
A little bit illegal.
Yeah, well, it's illegal. They have a base. It's a little complicated. They have a base, and it's even more complicated because it even dates back to some of the agreements from World War II. So it's quite complicated. But basically, the main thing is that about the Iraq War being illegal, about all that, and a lot of the flights and other these kidnappings of people to Guantanamo were done with airports here, and there's been a lot of discussion about that. Let's see what he has to say.
James, does there a time of day when these have they been falling down during the daytime and swelling up during the night, or
Yeah,
Has it been
swells
pretty
up,
much
swells up
constant?
during the night, I think.
Well, at 3 a.m., police came here in the middle to recover their van, which was exactly in the spot that you see here. There was a police van spot, and they came in at 3 a.m. just to get their van, nothing else. They didn't try to stop us or anything, it was just to get their van. But they did do it at 3 a.m., not in the middle of the day.
Yeah, so James, we can't actually see anything at the moment. We can only hear you.
How about now?
Yeah, I can see them.
So yes, there was police presence, but
Oh, the sound is really bad. I'm going to have to cut James off, I'm afraid, because otherwise it's going to really interfere. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm afraid we lost James there, but I guess he'll keep trying. So is Germany, like, basically Germany is an occupied territory, isn't it? Because the US has more military bases.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about it. I mean, basically, if you say stuff like that, then you get called a conspiracy theorist and.
No, well, I've looked it up on Wikipedia.
And it's a really popular with right wingers. So basically, the whole topic of if you say something like Germany is occupied, then it's like automatic right wing because they've used it a lot. So there's a really big stigma with that whole thing, and of course the history of it too. So it is related a little bit, but basically it's really crazy. Technically, there's no constitution. There is a Bill of Rights, but there's no constitution, and that goes back to the whole history of everything. So basically, after the wall fell, they could have made a constitution, but they didn't. And what's the really weirdest thing is, there is this organization. I guess it's kind of like the equivalent to the FBI, but here it's called the Department for the Protection of the Constitution. But there is no official constitution, so it's really a weird. Really weird thing, and maybe one time I can show you. They make every year these interesting reports about all the groups that are threatening the Constitution. And so far there hasn't been Bitcoin in this publication, but it could come in the future. Who knows? But yeah, you can see there's a lot of base. So this one Rammstein is the just like the band with the same name as the band.
I was going to say like the band. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a name of a city, and that has the largest American air base outside of the United States, and it has a lot of flights going in and out. And they're just so if anyone's watching and has military friends or whatever, and they want to get some advice, there is an organization called the Military Counseling Network, MCN. In a second I can pull up a link, and there's also in Kaiserslautern something called the GI Cafe. So the GI Cafe is almost like any other cafe. Anyone can go there, and you can just hang out, and they have concerts, and you can get advice, and you can get advice on how to get out of the military. You can get advice on what your rights are as an employer, and so on. So.
No, I think we're going to have to give up on James. Oh no! But James, if you can hear us, you should definitely join us later on because your microphone is making too much noise. But if you can check in with me on Skype, it would be really cool because maybe we can get you on your laptop. In a more kind of stable location. That would be really, really helpful. So yeah, well, we can continue the discussion here. Let's go to Q&A because I think we did actually have some points that were being raised. And Spotted Marley says, terrorists don't hate us, they hate our government, they hate our military, just like the rest of us. I think the concern at the moment is being spouted around, which is that ISIS are going to end up penetrating the homelands and the motherlands, because if these are just people and these people can move from place to place, then presumably they're not constrained to the region of the Middle East. Presumably they can just come into your country. In fact, many of these people were inspired from places like the United Kingdom to go there. So the fear
I saw a story this morning that there were homegrown ISIS supporters in Kansas or Oklahoma that were arrested for talking about beheading people, and they showed the pictures of a black guy that was there.
I think that sometimes, like when people get drawn into this debate, they don't realize that freedom and the way that we have liberty at the moment, and then, you know, thinking about John Stuart Mill's "My right to on liberty," he says, "My right to wave my fists ends at your nose." And this idea captured the imagination of so many people. It just felt right to us that freedom also comes with responsibility, and it's a delicate balancing act. This civilization that we've ended up here in the West isn't just some cozy end point. Like, you know, was it Fukuyama said that, you know, we've reached the end of history and now all there was to do was administration, right? We made it. Western democracy, everyone, okay? Congratulations. And that this somehow was the universality that could be applied everywhere, despite the fact that the world is a very diverse place. And whilst it's true that we have more in common than we realize, even across borders, the fact is that probably what we're dealing with in terms of commonality is some core base primitives, not in the way that we should conduct ourselves, certainly not in terms of what it means to live a good life. So when you start exporting that democracy like a product, like a can of baked beans or a bottle of Coke or whatever it is, you try dropping it on people entirely divorced of any context, especially when you start taking preemptive strikes on other people because you're saying, yeah, well, I'm going to make a statement about the future, of course, which nobody knows the certainty of, and I'm going to use that as justification for dropping bombs on people. Then all you're really doing is spreading tyranny. That's not really democracy. And in fact, I've said before, I'll say it again, Plato did predict this. Plato predicted that democracy would descend into tyranny. And not enough people realize that this Western democracy that we have is a delicate balancing act, not just, you know, the freedom of speech, but also the responsibility that comes with having that freedom. If I have absolute freedom, it's the same as saying no one else does, because then everyone else ends up in a constant state of terror, like, what's Chris going to do next? Maybe I'll be okay, but remember that Chris is the one with the absolute freedom. So Chris could at any point in time just take away mine. He would have the freedom to take away my comfort, my safety, my stability. I think really freedom begins with security and everyone having the ability to secure their environment.
I think the way I break it down is through the non-aggression principle, or basically the golden rule, which in Christianity is, and I'm not a Christian, so I go by the non-aggression principle, which is basically is a do no harm onto others, or that you wouldn't, so they wouldn't do it to you. And if you wouldn't want somebody to come and break down your door or whatever, or hit you, don't do that to somebody else, because it's wrong. You can pretty much gauge what is wrong by what you don't want done to you, unless you're a psychopath.
Yeah, so we were looking for the I haven't been able to find the Cantonese translation for democracy. The standard Chinese one is Minzu, and I found that, but I don't know those characters. I know a little bit of Chinese, but I don't know the characters alone, and I haven't been able. All I've been able to figure out is that it's the same as the traditional one, but maybe there is a different word on, like a kind of like slang dialect in Hong Kong that has uses a different one. So Cantonese uses a lot of the same characters, but they just have a totally different pronunciation. So it'll mean probably they have these two characters for democracy too, but they just pronounce it in a totally different way. And it would be interesting to see if there is another one, because sometimes you can get insight to the way people are thinking with it when they have different ways of explaining things. So I can't really explain it. It's more to do with language, but sometimes they don't say democracy like we say it because that's like a kind of, I guess, a Greek origin, and they have a totally different concept of what they're talking about. And sometimes you can get insight. And maybe there's a difference between the Cantonese one, like you were saying. That would be really interesting. If anyone knows a good Cantonese dictionary, I've never really tried to look anything up in Cantonese, then you can, put it in the comments. That would be interesting.
I'm more interested in the language that the people speak rather than something like Mandarin, which is kind of, government sanctioned language.
Yeah, right. But I wanted to compare that. I wanted to compare, what the government sanctioned. Really, all that Mandarin is the dialect from one part of North China. That's that one right there, yeah. And that's what people use to communicate with each other because it's such a big country, and so they use that to communicate with each other. Because some of the dialects are so strong that you can't really understand each other. It even gets like that in Europe too with some languages, that it's the same language, but it's so hard to understand the other person. I don't think we have it that much in English, that they use a kind of standard to communicate with each other if they're from a totally different region.
Oh, we have that problem in the United States where...
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I went to basic training for the Army in Georgia, I couldn't understand a word out of the drill sergeant down there.
Okay, well, I understand Southern really well, so I guess Southern is the hardest dialect, and if you can understand that, then you're okay.
So it looks like the word democracy in Chinese means people-driven or civilian-driven, which is subtly different to the ancient Greek etymon, which is more to do with agency and power. So there you have the kratos. Here you have participatory is more kind of emphasized here. And it looks like this idea has been around for some time in Chinese thinking, in the kind of the culture. Looks like 1895 was the earliest date that I was reading here, and you have the idea of the three principles of people, which let's just go through this. It is a political philosophy developed by Sun Yat-sen as part of the philosophy to make China a free, prosperous, and powerful nation. Oh, okay, that's an interesting way of looking at it. So it was from the point of view of trying to make the country powerful rather than the people first. The three principles are often translated and summarized as nationalism, democracy, and the livelihood of the people. Its influence and legacy of implementation is most apparent in the governmental organization of the Republic of China, which currently administers Taiwan, Penghu. I'm not sure of these places, actually. I'm not sure. I'm totally naive when it comes to this part of the world, which is kind of, you're actually charting my learning of it right now.
They're just islands. So it's just basically this, it looks like, I don't remember this guy exactly, but if they are part of Taiwan. So what happened was there was Mao's revolution, and then the people that were in charge before him, they all went to exile in Taiwan. And there's a few islands that are disputed, and that's what all those other names were. This here, see the Matsu Islands.
Yeah, okay, interesting. And then the philosophy has been claimed as the cornerstone of the Republic of China's policy, and the principles also appear in the first line of the national anthem. I mean, that's kind of ironic, but when I've seen the BBC have this great show called Reporters, which is kind of this old school good journalism. They go out and they report things, as they actually see them. And one of the reports they did a couple of years ago was this Chinese family, and they were like, look, I don't know what you Western lot all think about this democracy thing, but it's really not that bad here. Like, they kind of said, like, day to day, your life isn't that hindered. You can go around, you can do the things that you want to do. And it made me realize just how simple things can look from a distance, that when you're kind of cozy and you're in your sort of Western bubble, it's very easy to think that other people elsewhere live in this kind of dictatorial regime, especially if that's what your news broadcasters are telling you. But then when you actually speak to people on the ground, a lot of them actually say things aren't that bad. But then isn't it also the case that you don't really know that you're a slave until you try moving in ways that you're not meant to move? And so, like, people that work in city jobs, in financial sphere, like, they feel like they're free because, they're turning up to work every day, they go out for beers, and everything feels fine until they start to be entrepreneurial or until they start to be creative or inventive, and then all of a sudden they feel the force. And so you're not really free. if your freedom depends on living in a certain way.
Right. So, yeah. What did that 689 mean? Does anyone know?
Yes, so that was the number of votes that the current administration needed in order to run for election in
Okay.
2017, or at least that was the number of votes they actually got, and that was all that they were required to have. So not 689,000, just 689. So James is back. Here's some deeping. No video again. James, can you hear us? No, he's muted himself. Let's see if he comes back online anyway. Okay, so it looks like in China people have principle. Oh, hang on. Okay, so I'm reading further down in that article of the three principles. You have the principle of Minquan, and it's usually translated as democracy, and it literally means the people's power or government by the people. Okay, so then in comes this word power. Let me just pull it up on share screen. And to Sun, it represented a Western constitutional government. He divided political life of his ideal for China into two sets of powers, the power of politics and the power of governance. Yeah, so this idea of politics and governments, that's an interesting dissection, because I've always been telling people that, you know, an anarchist system would not be devoid of governing, the practice of governing, but it would be devoid of a government, that is to say, a centralized governing body, right? In the future, I'm anticipating coming about pretty much whether we like it or not, it's the transition that we really have control over, is who it is that does the governing and where exactly that takes place, that it's probably going to take place everywhere. And therefore it is crucial, I think, that people are educated, because if you're not educated, and you don't understand the world around you, you're not able to build a relationship with the entities around you, then I think you're going to find yourself in danger, because you're not going to be able to make the best decisions if your decision-making capabilities are compromised. Jamie's looking. Well, what do you think?
Well, yeah, being educated, I mean, that's a powerful tool. And a lot of people will use uneducated people as tools, no pun intended, but they will manipulate people that are uneducated because they can, and other people will try to bring the uneducated up to their level, and I think that's kind of what we try to do here. You know, one example was yesterday, you'd posted something about making a mutual agreement or a parallel agreement, and I was like, well, who'd you make the agreement with? And you were like, no, you misunderstood me. This is a legal term. And so, I mean, like, we encourage people to ask questions if it's something we don't understand, but the act of governing, I think most people can govern themselves. And, you know, I don't need somebody to tell me when to do a lot of things. I can organize a lot of my life with my computer scheduler to remind me when to do things and certain things, and make mutual agreements. Reciprocity, I think, is a big part of it, where you're going to just respect other people and they respect you, and it's going to be voluntary agreements with individuals or with companies that will be able to get you by in the future, and not some organization that's, you know, off in another city dictating rules that you have to follow that are completely arbitrary to your situation. I mean, whether or not I can, you know, have a 4-inch blade on my pocket knife or a 2-inch blade on my pocket knife. What the fuck difference does it make?
Right, well, the government is there to regulate the relationships that form between the people, and the reason they use blunt tools like, if you pardon the pun from me, the blunt tools like regulating knife blades is because they think that on average it will have the effect of reducing the amount of knife violence, for example. But all they're dealing with is numbers and charts. The same with the speculators and the traders on Wall Street. What they're dealing with are abstract numbers that are synthetic, entirely divorced of rich content present, like being there at the time. Like, what the hell does the government administrivia know about gun violence when they're not the ones on the street? Now, what they do is they play lip service to it, and then they'll have a photo shoot with them riding in the back of a police car and shaking hands with the police chief, and, you know, watching someone as they've been arrested, maybe even talking to some of the victims, and it's like, I feel your pain. But it's not genuine because they're not there all the time. They're just doing it for press. They're doing it because that's what they know the public wants to see, but they're not doing it day in and day out. So the government really, I would say, is there to regulate the relationships between people, but the tools that they use are very, very blunt.
Yeah, it was funny. Yesterday I had to go to a government office, and I've known for a long time that federal buildings in the United States, any place that a federal employee works, it's illegal to bring a gun onto the premises, and they have the big signs up. But on the sign I noticed that they had a picture of a knife with a circle and a X through it, plus a picture of a multi-tool, you know, those pliers with the screwdriver and stuff. So you can't bring those into a...
And you need to have shoes on, and you need to have a T-shirt on, and there probably are going to have that. Probably the whole door will be covered with stickers in a few years with all the things you're allowed and not allowed to do. 'Cause it gets really ridiculous sometimes. But
I was surprised they didn't have a fingernail clipper on there.
Yeah. So I got a question on Twitter, and hold on. The Divine Celt, he wants to know when the classical bands are going to return to the protest. So apparently there were some people playing classical music in the protest, like a little mini symphony walking around. But I don't know if James can hear us or if he knows, if he's seen the classical band. And there's a few questions in the question and answer section. This guy Dan says...
Yeah, I just selected his question. I'm trying to look into it. The leaders of Occupy. He's saying the leaders of Occupy. I didn't know there were leaders of Occupy.
Yeah, well, probably it's just the press speakers, or I don't know, whoever, you know, gets to speak, whoever the press pays attention to, sometimes gets...
It's Benny Tai.
Maybe.
Oh, yes,
Benny Tai.
Okay.
Yes.
So is
I'm actually on the laptop now.
Okay.
Great.
Cool.
Is the connection much better now?
Well, the sound is better, but we can't see you.
Okay, so the video is not very good, but we're back at the barricades.
Okay.
So we're back here. But if the audio's good, then at least we can talk.
Can we ask the question? Have you been asked to go home by anyone at Occupy?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Okay.
No, not by Occupy, but by the police. This morning they sent a team of about 10 police officers to come and negotiate, to ask us to leave, saying people have to go to work, you know, just trying to put the guilt trip on you. You're blocking business, people are trying to get to work. But that was a shift in tactic purposefully done by the Hong Kong police after they saw how their tactics of aggression backfired. They've just gone the peaceful route, and that's been the assumption is that's been ordered by the chief executive to tone it down. So instead of sending riot police has been ordered to stand down, and instead police sent 10 senior officers to negotiate with organizers this morning. And basically the result was, when the police came through, they were just ridiculed and just made, you know, people just were just making jokes because they didn't feel threatened. They were ready for action, basically. You can see the mass that we're having. So after the aggression on Sunday, people were really expecting aggression again. So when the police actually came peacefully, it was a real surprise, and the reaction was mocking the police and ridiculing them to try and stand us down verbally.
Okay, well that answers Dang's question. You're not being. And are the crowds getting bigger, or are things kind of staying the same?
Things are staying the same. Yesterday, the crowd started to get smaller at about 1 a.m. The reason is that's when public transport here gets cut off.
Mm-hmm.
So people wanted to catch the last bus or last train home, and that's really when the crowd did die down. However, tomorrow is a public holiday, and so is the following day. So the next 2 days are public holidays, which means no one's going to work. So they can stay out all night today, tomorrow. So that's why this is expected to last at least until Sunday.
Okay, but I actually heard there's going to be quite a big protest tomorrow. I heard that.
Yes. So tomorrow was October the 1st when it was. Tomorrow was when it was actually officially supposed to begin. Instead, the action of the police on Sunday just pushed it forward by a couple of days. It wasn't intentional at all. It was just their violence just pushed it forward by a couple of days. The people were ready.
Wow. Well, our audience is growing. We've got 34 people. Some people have been tweeting us as well. What can you see at the moment? We don't have a video of you, but we can hear you very clearly.
So at the moment, things are a bit quiet over here in Mongkok. It's just about 3 or 4. I don't know. Is the video off?
Yeah, the video's off. I mean, you could try setting your bandwidth settings up at the top to see. It's that little kind of triangle symbol, adjust bandwidth. And try setting that for low or something.
I'll turn it off and on again.
Mm-hmm. That nearly always fixes like 90% of IT problems.
Not only IT problems, but cars and everything.
Yeah. So this is an interesting article in the South China Morning Post saying that Benny Tai admits we failed. So that doesn't look like propaganda or spin, does it? Occupy Central co-founder Benny Tai surprised Hong Kongers yesterday by suggesting the civil disobedience campaign had been a failure up to this point, in quotes, and that public support for its planned mass sit-in was waning. It doesn't look like it's waning from the video from James. His comment in the video with Bloomberg News Agency came just 2 days after he and others declared Hong Kong had entered an era of civil disobedience after Beijing announced a restrictive framework for the 2017 chief executive election. In later comments to the South China Morning Post, he said it might be easy for people to vent their anger over Beijing's decision in rallies such as on Sunday, but determined civil disobedience might be another thing.
Oh, sorry. It sounds to me like the police violence had been...
Why is somebody tweeting that out? That's actually an article. Sorry, everyone. That's actually an article from like the 2nd of September. So this was back when it was just. It's still interesting nonetheless. Zero Hedge tweeted that out like in the last 24 hours. That was a bit bad. They should have checked the date on that. Still an interesting piece, given where we are now, saying that it's failed, and this is where we've ended up. How can? Let me get this up on screen. This is quite funny. This is a sketch. This is in that same article that I saw Zero Hedge tweet out. How would you tackle Occupy Central? Start charging them rent. Brilliant. It's usually how crony capitalism works. You just charge people for the essential things they need in life and just keep upping the price and just keep upping the price. But don't up it too much, otherwise you give them an incentive to revolt. Got to get
I love the fat cats in the cartoon.
Yeah. Something Vinay Gupta said once was interesting. He said that the welfare state pays you, your handouts to stop you from becoming a revolutionary. Like that's your crack lolly. that they put you on to stop you from becoming radicalized. And so a lot of these incumbent power structures, I guess at the moment, have got a difficult balancing act, because in order to function well as a parasite, ideally you have to be invisible to the host. The host shouldn't even know you're there. But once the host does realize you're there, you're really on borrowed time, because yes, you can keep upping the rent and you can keep pumping those bubbles up, but eventually you're taking away people's incentive to keep you in that position of power. Eventually they'll just go, well, fuck it, it's not even worth it, I'm not even going to pay the rent anymore. And then you lose it completely. So a lot of these power structures have got a difficult strategy to come up with in the coming years. James is back. Come in, James. We can hear you. We can hear the background. Just no visuals. What we might have to do is might have to exit this video and just try more on the back end. See if we can get some kind of video situation up and running. How long have we been going now with this video anyway? Anyone know?
I think we're at an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Or no, 2 hours.
2 hours, in which case what I'm going to suggest is that we end this video now, especially I think since Christoph Atlas's time slot is coming up in a couple of hours, and then I'll talk to James on the back channel and see if we can get anything more fixed. And also it sounds like tomorrow it's going to be really kicking off as well, so I don't want to overdo it too. I don't want to peak too early kind of thing. How are you guys feeling? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think it would be great to check in tomorrow again and see what's going on. I know my wife asked me here if this was going to be a 24-hour CNN thing. I'm like, no, I can't go for that long.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see what happens. I think it's okay to stop it now, and we can check in if anything interesting is going on. We can try to get in touch.
Mm. And I will just say, just as a bit of administration, over the next couple of days, I'm going to be working with Chris McCready to get our first 100 megabit upstream BitTorrent seed working. So I went to see Chris yesterday at Google Campus in London, where I've done some shows before, and they've got a 100 megabyte connection. Obviously, I don't want to be greedy and take too much of that. We'll probably tweak the settings so that it just uses up a little bit of bandwidth here and there. But that will be great because we can seed some of our more important episodes from Google Campus, and then we can actually start to get, decentralized properly. And so we're going to be working on that probably on Thursday night UK time. It will be 11 p.m. UK time, 10 p.m. UTC on Thursday. We'll have another town hall and we'll go through what Chris's thoughts are on building the website properly, because he's already done some sketches. It's actually up on our GitHub at the moment, which is github.com/World Crypto Network. So thank you to everyone, including my guests, James, Jamie, Theo, and Tom, who was here earlier in spirit. Thank you very much for joining us and all your Q&A, and stay tuned at World Crypto Net, and I'm at Mr. Chris Ellis on Twitter, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Keep revolting.